I will say, I don't know if this is too soon, but
Yes, sir, there she goes.
Hello and welcome to episode 238 of Section 138. I'm your host, Mark Colley. As always, I'm joined by Bryson, and as always, I'm joined by Jacob. It's been a while since we last chatted. We're still dealing with the collective grief and trauma of that final wildcard game, but here we are exactly 2 weeks later, trying to dig through it, trying to deal with it. We've got an exciting episode this week, but before we get to any of that, Bryson, Jacob, how are you guys?
well, I would think most of myself is over the playoff loss. Of course, there's still a couple of stuff that's bothering me, but yeah, it's been quite a long layoff, and I guess enjoying the rest of the MLB postseason. I'm not sure how much you guys are watching, but definitely some entertaining games that are going on right now. So it'll be fun to kind of relive this Blue Jay season and kind of just show how difficult it truly is to predict stuff that will happen in a full season. So I guess that's what we're going to revisit today, and it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, honestly, I've been watching more of the playoffs than I thought I was, and I don't know if I said this on air, but I said I wasn't going to watch any. But I don't know. It's been at least the championship series, the Phillies and the Padres. That's been a great one. But it's hard to think. 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks today, actually on Saturday, we were watching what could have been one of the greatest playoff games in Blue Jay history, and now we're sitting here recapping the season because it is over. So
And the Leafs still suck.
no comment, no comment. I'm not. Raptors are winning the chip. Anyways, moving on. Let's recap what we just said about this season.
Speaking of stupid predictions, yeah, we're going to be taking a look at all the dumb predictions we had at the start of the season. This episode, it's an annual episode we do. It can also be called the Look How Dumb We Are episode because none of us ever look good in this episode after predicting stuff at the start of the season. We made these predictions on April 5th, a couple days before opening day. And if anyone wants to go back and listen to that episode before we get into any of this, it's episode 189. You can check it out and listen to everything we had to say then. But a little preview of how things are going to work today. We're going to be going back through each of our predictions. And then at the end of each prediction, we're going to be deciding who got it most wrong. And whoever got it most wrong gets a point against them in the Loon meter. And whoever at the end has the most points against them is going to be considered the biggest loon of this episode. So that's what we've got going today. But before we get to any of that, we do have some news we need to talk about. The Blue Jays extending John Schneider, giving him a 3-year deal with an team option for 2026. This was a little bit strange. It felt weird that the Blue Jays didn't announce it immediately in the postseason press conference. However, they took 2 weeks, they considered it, and now he's a long-term manager. 2 questions for you guys quickly to knock out before we get to the predictions. Why did it take so long to make this announcement, and how do you feel about the length of the deal?
Well, first of all, we learned that in those 2 weeks, the Blue Jays, Ross Atkins, Mark Shapiro sat down with John Schneider and had a whole philosophy meeting before they gave him the deal. Because although to many it makes sense why he was the manager, why he's the next step or seemingly the next step, they did want to fully iron things out and go through their due diligence. And I think that's why it took so long. And I think for a 3-year deal, not too bad. I mean, could go either way. I feel like this is one where you're not going to give him a 1-year deal. That doesn't really make any sense. And 2 years, you could have done it, but I think a 3-year deal is fine. It gives you when you think about it, you got a lot of your key players right now still on the roster for those next 3 seasons. It gives them time to work with them, gives them a full season of a manager and then 2 more potentially. I think it's a good deal. And I think it makes sense considering what he was able to do with this team throughout the half of the season that he had this year.
I will say, I don't know if this is too soon, but I will share that Kevin Gausman is very happy about this. He put it on Twitter and, just kind of telling you guys, hey, Kevin Gausman's fine with it. And I think, I don't know if he was ever mad at him for it, but it just kind of shows that, there's no hard feelings there. So it was interesting with the timing too, Mark, because when Ross Atkins had his media thing, like he had a perfect opportunity to lay this one out and kind of just name a manager immediately. And I did find it a little strange, but at the same time, of course, the general thing is we have no idea what happens behind closed doors. Like there is a very good chance this may have been agreed to weeks prior, and they were kind of just waiting for a perfect time to do it. But then, you kind of wonder, and then there's kind of reports about other kind of candidates. I know that there was the Mark Feinsand tweet about Kevin Long being a potential candidate, and then he listed the Jays as a team. So perhaps while there was some smoke around that area, the Jays wanted to get ahead of it and name him that. I know there was, I don't know if there was legitimate sources on it, but there was buzz about, Terry Francona. I don't know how much or how true that was at all. And perhaps Schneider was their guy the entire time. I mean, and then they were kind of just finding out I think the perfect time to announce it. We really don't know. But the thing is that it just felt like felt inevitable that John Schneider was going to be back. And we know the connection he has with the players. We know the changes he made when he took over in the summer. And that, I think that's why it made total sense for it. And I know you can look at the contract or whatever in terms of the length. When it comes to managers now, and I think we learned this a lot this year with all the changes just throughout the league in general, I really don't even look at the term anymore. Like, I'm pretty sure Charlie Montoyo was extended during spring training, if that even just shows you how,
that's actually something we spoke about in our prediction episode when I was listening back to it this morning.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, it does show you, like, as much as, he signed for 3 years or whatever, like, that's still not a guarantee of your security for those 3 years. So either way, though, I'm happy they got it done. And unfortunately, because I'm sure you guys have seen some backlash, of course, on it, that people didn't want him to come back. The thing that bothers me a little bit about this is that we are going to, or at least a good chunk of Blue Jays fans have forgotten the good he did taking over in the summer, and they're forever going to judge him on those 2 games, or at least for the next year. You're going to judge him on those 2 games, perhaps overthinking a little bit, maybe making 1 or 2 bad decisions. And, I listened to one of his interviews yesterday. I think he was on Overdrive on TSN, and he was already saying that there's already a couple things that he's looked at where, in terms of, and he's hinted at, defensive substitutions, who came out of the game. He says, that's kind of one thing that I guess throughout these last couple of weeks, it's something that he is dwelling on. So, I feel for him on that, because as much as we were all a little frustrated at the time, he still, I think, in my opinion, is the right guy for this job, especially with this organization, this whole story. So I'm completely fine with them back. I'm glad they got that out of the way. And I'm also glad that Kevin Gausman supports the decision.
Yeah. I mean, it was always not only the most obvious decision, but the most logical decision. Like, look, he did a really good job with this team, and there's no denying that. Like, you can look at that game 2 of the wild card and blame some of those decisions on him, and you can look at games and decisions down the stretch that maybe didn't go the Blue Jays' way. But ultimately, this is a manager who came in with a team that's floundering, a team that was directionless, and he took them and went on a 101 win pace down the stretch. And he had 2.5 very stressful months of managing in front of him, and he maneuvered it very well, and maneuvered it to the point of being on pace for 101 wins. Like, you can't really look at that and knock it. I respect the Blue Jays for maybe looking elsewhere. It seems like I really don't understand why it took them so long to announce this. I think the only solution to that is really the fact that they were looking elsewhere, and maybe looking towards a team that was in the playoffs and waiting for that team to be eliminated so they could have discussions about whether this manager is a fit for the Blue Jays, whether this manager would come across and travel to Toronto and manage the Blue Jays. And I think the most logical fit for that is Terry Francona, based on the fact that Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins are both from Cleveland. And then Cleveland got eliminated. Couple days pass, and then the Blue Jays announced John Schneider as manager. Maybe that's connecting the dots a little bit too much. Maybe the Blue Jays are just a very process-oriented team and wanted to think through it a little bit. Who knows? A little bit strange that it took that long, but bottom line, John Schneider is a manager of this team for years to come. Most likely, as we saw with Charlie Montoyo, nothing is guaranteed, but it's most likely that he has an opportunity to oversee some of the most successful baseball in franchise history, hopefully. As we saw a couple weeks ago, things can go south very fast. But let's look back to April 5th, episode 189, when we predicted what would happen this year with the Toronto Blue Jays. And we could not have been more wrong, but we're going to enjoy it anyways. First off, just to get this out of the way, we were talking about the power rankings at the time. Major League Baseball in their final preseason power rankings had the Blue Jays at number 2. All 3 of us said it was a bit too generous, Jacob thought the Blue Jays were third or fourth. Bryson, you said, quote, teams can be overhyped at the beginning of this year and then fall off the rails, but you didn't think it would happen with the Jays. And you specifically said you didn't think they were going to act like the Toronto Maple Leafs, which I guess was a little bit of foreshadowing.
That aged well.
But in terms of specific predictions, let's start with what we started that episode with. We had an over-under on George Springer games played. We set it at 140.5. I said that he would be under around 130. Bryson, you said he'd be under, but still right around 140. Jacob, you're the only one who took the over. You said he'd be at 145. In reality, George Springer ended around 133. I think regardless of what we predicted, this can still be taken as a success. I know he had trouble with his health, both in his lower body and, of course, his elbow and his right arm later in the season. But the fact that he did play 133 games after only getting into 78 last year in 2021, I think this season can be seen as a success from pure health standpoint. And you look at WAR, and we're going to get into this a little bit later, but George Springer was among the leaders on the team in WAR. So I think regardless of our predictions and how we may have been close to the number, I think I was closest. I was 3 games off. Not to brag, but this is what this episode is about. But regardless, you can look at George Springer's health and take it as a success this year.
The fact that he was able to get into this many games and still not be truly healthy, I think it, you like you said, it has to be considered a success. And I'm hoping, this offseason goes well for him. We've heard that there's going to be a lot of procedures potentially going through with him, and suffered a concussion. I think we discussed that in one of our episodes. I'm not sure if it did, but concussion is basically what happened to him. And I think there was also an elbow or shoulder sprain. So it's looking like he's going to be ready for spring training, or at least the regular season. But I'm thinking this season, it wasn't even, like, it was a good season, I think, out of George Springer. He's one of the best leadoff hitters, I think, in baseball. Finishes the season, I think you have to consider it a success. 269 average. That's what you want. You want somebody to get on base. You want those home runs. You want, he's one of, I think, 5 Blue Jays to have 20 or more home runs, led the league or led the team in stolen bases. Like, if this is a non-healthy George Springer, I don't even want to see what a healthy George Springer would be, because that, I think, he could easily become one of the league's MVPs. And I think the best part is he wants to be here. And I think he is one of the, I guess, what's the best way to put it? He's one of the standout, personalities, I think, of the Blue Jays. Like, if you look at this fun team, the one that with the home run jacket and all the this is my house and everything, all that type of stuff, like, he is he is in the forefront of that. And it's good to see that guys like this want to be on that team. And I'm just praying for a healthy season, and at least things were handled a lot better this season for him. And you're now hoping that going into 2023, the head issue is dealt with, all of the sprains, any procedures that need to be done are done. And then we're looking to see what he can do as a hopefully fully healthy season.
Yeah, it's just with this, I think, to be fair, like, this for the over-unders that, Mark, we were going over. I think actually this was one of only 2, but still, this to me felt very obvious. Like, at the time when I guess you and I said the under, and even Jacob was still around the same mark, even though he went over. I just felt like this was very obvious. And the fact that as much as we couldn't really get a healthy, if you want to just categorize the word healthy with him, for me, that was expected, but it was the way of how this team was going to manage it. And they managed it well enough for him to be in that many games, because this was obviously way off from last year. We got George Springer in majority of the games. We know how good he was, and we know how good George Springer is. So it's no surprise about how his performance is when he's healthy, or at least in a way to be in the lineup every day. And, there was a couple stints maybe in the summer with the elbow originally where he had to DH for literally consecutive weeks. And then he finally, I think it was either the end of July or August, is when he finally went back to the outfield. And I remember even me saying at the time, like, to be a little cautious when it comes to that, because another bad or another jump or another dive, another throw could easily just throw off his elbow again. So kudos to the Jays for that. For me, this asks me an important question for next year. And I guess I can throw it at you guys quickly. It's just, you tend to see this from aging center fielders. And I think you know where I'm going with this. If there's another way to keep George Springer or put him in a better position, how long do you guys think until we see him make a transition or maybe a slow transition over to right field, because we saw that a lot this year when Bradley Zimmer came into the game as a defensive replacement. To me, I think it's inevitable that we're eventually going to get to that point where he's got to move over. But if that's going to keep him healthy, I'm fully supportive of it. And I think, if it's not next year, maybe a couple years down the road, I think it's just something that we're heading towards in terms of him moving to a corner outfield position.
Yeah, I think it's probably inevitable. And I don't know what the center field options are looking like on the free agent market and the trade market this offseason, but if there's someone available that could fit the Blue Jays' needs, certainly I think you pursue him. And if he comes relatively cheap, then I think that's something the Blue Jays do. And yeah, my concern with doing that is the fact that you then lose a DH spot for someone like Alejandro Kirk / Danny Jansen, or giving Vladdy a day off his feet, or whatever it might be. But I think based on how good George Springer is, if you can get his bat in the lineup for those additional 29 games, maybe that's a bit unrealistic, him playing every day, but maybe 25 extra games, I think that's ultimately probably something that's worth it to pursue in the offseason. Okay, the biggest loon on this question is Jacob. He was the farthest off, so he gets a point in his column. I want to, heading into the next question, well, I'll leave this until we consider it, but the next prediction we made was Hyun-Jin Ryu over under his ERA, and we put the over under at 4 on the dot. This is embarrassing for all of us. We all took the under. I didn't give a specific range. Bryson, you said between 370 and 380. Jacob, you said under at 388. Turned out Hyun-Jin Ryu only made 6 starts. He only pitched 27 innings, and his ERA was 5.67. This was pretty brutal for all of us. I don't know if there's a biggest loser on this. I don't know if there's a biggest loon. I think we're all just loons on this question. Jacob's the least loon.
In our defense, like, we weren't predicting him to go down with Tommy John surgery. Like, that's a tough one on us. Like, that's why I don't know. I feel like if you want to give us all points for that or give us a pass, I'm fine with either. It just, I think Jacob's going to say the same thing. Like, that's just tough to kind of predict.
Yeah, I was gonna jump in. I don't know. I feel like if we're gonna disqualify one prediction, I think it's got to be this one, because
look at the one under it.
I don't before I. Oh yeah, okay, maybe that one too. But for this one, like, maybe if he has a full season of not severe elbow issues, ERA is around 4-ish. Like, it's not. I think we were predicting him to at least play most of the season, if not 75% of it or something like that. So I don't know. I don't think we can really count this one, just considering we didn't expect him to do or to miss this much time. We thought, like, just like with Springer, after that offseason, hopefully we heard that he was doing a ton of work throughout the offseason to improve his just general pitches and everything like that. So I think we all predicted a much better season or a much longer season out of Ryu, and not have him unfortunately out after only a few starts.
Well, I was going to propose that we give points to Bryson and I, because Jacob, you were the closest. So either we subtract a point for Jacob for being the most correct, or we give Bryson and I points for being the least correct. I think that's the most fair. Either way, it doesn't really make a difference.
I think you two should get one, because I don't know if my prediction about, what was the other one? My George Springer one, I don't really think I deserve to lose a point for that one.
Okay.
There's a few more that I don't deserve to as well.
For that. So to update the Loon meter, we're all tied at 1 apiece as we head into the next question, which, as Bryson alluded to, is also pretty brutal for all 3 of us. We were predicting the number of appearances that Nate Pearson would make. Bryson was the closest on this. He said that Nate Pearson would make 20 appearances. He said, quote, "I need to see it to believe it," but you also said when he's in those 20 games, expect him to be highly effective. And then myself and Jacob, we look a little bit more silly on this. We said, I said 25 to 30 games. Jacob, you said 30 games. In actuality, Nate Pearson made 0 appearances in the major leagues. It was all either AAA or struggling through. At the start of the season, he had mono, and then he was dealing with a couple other injuries, and it's just a mess. And now he's in a Dominican Winter League trying to figure things out. So this is a mess on all of us. We all look stupid. How do we want to count this in the points?
Well, under your logic from before, you two should get points then, because I was technically the closest. If we're gonna follow that rule, again, this is hard because this was before the mono, like you said. He got injured again midway. Like this was another brutal one, I guess. But anyways, you keep going.
Well, I was gonna say, I said 25 to 30. Jacob said 30.
Oh,
so you could argue that I had a better guess.
No.
So the one conclusion is Jacob's for sure getting points here, regardless of
if
you're joining it.
Well,
okay.
Here's the thing: you were the closest, but like,
well, I could say that I could argue the same thing with Ryu. With you, you weren't close either at 380.
I stand corrected.
We were all a little bit embarrassed here.
Yeah, to be fair, we all predicted. We all predicted like even if he.
Assuming they were healthy.
What was it? I think he was supposed to miss a couple weeks to months with mono.
That's how it started. Like
that. Yeah.
End
so
of April, we thought.
Yeah. So I think we predicted he come back as a reliever. Obviously, nobody predicted the Kikuchi stuff and whatever. But if say he comes back, I don't know, like mid-July or whatever, you could still, in theory, make maybe not 30 appearances out of the bullpen, but you could make 15 to 25. I know that's a big range.
There's no justifying our prediction.
Yeah, no, it was terrible regardless, but
like there's no
we still get a pass with the unexpected mono and stuff. But yes, technically it does fall on us. But I'll let you two decide it. I know Jacob's getting points for sure.
I think it's your decision, Bryson. It's your call. Do I get a point or no?
Like I want to try and follow what we did with Springer. So technically we both got points for Springer, right? That's how we did it.
Yeah.
So then I think we should follow the same rule then.
Okay, so both of us get points. So Jacob and I are leading.
Yeah.
Jacob and I are leading. We're both tied with 2. Bryson, you're at 1. We move on to our next prediction, which is Gabriel Moreno's Major League debut. It turns out it was June 11th against Detroit. Bryson, you were scarily close on this one, and I'm tempted to remove a point from you because you said June 13th, so you were 2 days off, which was... I mean, kudos to you. I think that's the most impressive prediction we have on this episode. You said at the time, quote, you can't rule out the possibility that it could be a Cleveland Guardian by July. Of course, that didn't end up happening, but you were 2 days off. So credit to you. You avoid a point. I was the next closest. I said May 31st. And Jacob, you were the farthest. You said June 27th. Pretty similar distance from the two of us. I was 12 days off. Jacob, you were 16 days off. So I think all of us deserve a little bit of credit on this one. We were all relatively close, especially after how egregious the last 2 predictions look with Ryu and Pearson. We look a lot better on this one. But I think Jacob gets a point on this, right?
100% he does.
I mean, so I'll take it. I'm not going to disagree on that, but I feel like we were all I'm just saying, since we were all right. Who was it? Who was in May 31st? That was
Mark.
Okay, I said May 31st. Yeah.
So that technically that's not in June, but like we can consider it like all 3 of us were within like a month spans. So it's not like we can say, oh, we came up in September or whatever. It's like a call up. So I'll still take the point, but I think that we were all like within a month, which is close enough.
Yeah,
I will say
all within 16 days.
I will say that is like, I know you highlighted me about the Guardian thing, but I'm pretty sure like closer to that deadline, you and Jacob especially were very favorable about. I'm not saying Moreno, but I'm saying a catcher in general was going to get traded. So I think that was kind of a notion throughout all of us throughout the year. So, but yeah, I accept Jacob's opinion on taking a point there, and I need an updated score now.
We all deserve a little bit of a pat on the back for that, but updated count. Jacob 3 points. He's in the lead for an award none of us want to win. I have 2, and Bryson, you have 1. Again, incredible prediction there, Bryson. Okay, this one also makes us all look a little bit stupid, as is the theme. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. home run total for 2022. Vladdy ended up with 32 homers, which, you know, is pretty good, but compared to our guesses is pretty bad. I was the closest. I said he would have 45 home runs. Jacob, you were the next closest. You said he would have 50 home runs. And Bryson, I hate to call you out like this, but you said he would have 53 home runs. You're the biggest loon on this question.
Yeah, I got to jump in. I take full responsibility. Jacob doesn't even get, like, Jacob gets a pass for that too. Like we were, I don't know. Like I think we were like Vladdy was good this year. It's not like he was bad. It's just it wasn't 2021 Vladdy, and then me coming into the year thought he could have elevated that. So I don't know what his ceiling is. I don't know if 2021 was the ceiling or we still have yet to see more. But unfortunately, especially for my prediction, just that breakout or elevation from 2021 did not happen. So I take full responsibility. I will take the Loon point on that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the common theme here is we expected and the league expected a much better season out of just the entire Blue Jays. And it wasn't, it's not a bad season. Like when you win 92 games, you're almost at 93, almost at your AL East division winning total back a couple of years ago or almost a decade ago. But like it was a good season. But I think the hype was maybe a little bit too much, or it was too high. And I think we were all sort of buying into it. But I don't know. At least I'm not wrong. I'm still surprised it's at 50. Like I thought I was going to be lowest there. I remember Bryson was the highest, but I just April or whenever we made this back in the spring, I need to revisit that and think like, what was I doing?
Mark was the least optimistic for that. Like we were both optimistic, but I was definitely like I was 1A, you were 1B.
Okay, so Bryson gets the point on that. Bryson and I are now tied with 2 points, and Jacob is the biggest Loon right now with 3 points. Okay, that was it for our specific player predictions. Then we moved into general individual performances. The first question we tackled was which Blue Jays will be at the All-Star game. And I think this might be a little bit hard to judge because there's a lot of names flying around here. In reality, it turned out that Vladdy, Alejandro Kirk, Alek Manoah, Santiago Espinal, and Jordan Romano, 5 Blue Jay All-Stars. We all had Vladimir Guerrero Jr. as an All-Star, and I think that's where the similarities stop. So Bryson and I, we both had Kevin Gausman as an All-Star. That didn't work out.
I had Chapman.
You also had Matt Chapman as an All-Star. That didn't work out. Bryson, both you and I had Bo Bichette as an All-Star. That didn't work out. Jacob, you and I had Jordan Romano as an All-Star.
Let's ignore my last one though.
What was your last? Oh my God. Okay.
You did have Jose Barrios as an All-Star, and I will call you out on this. At the time you said, quote, I think it's fair to say that Barrios is going to have a season unlike one that we've ever experienced or one we've ever seen from a Blue Jay. And you specifically said that you weren't choosing Gausman to be an All-Star because you thought Jose Barrios was going to be better. So
I feel
a bit rough on that guess for you. Although to be fair, neither Jose Barrios or Kevin Gausman made the All-Star team, so you can throw that criticism at us as well.
Yeah.
But isn't my quote correct though? Like he did have a season unlike one we've expected. Or
oh boy, okay.
Like it just wasn't good. It's just we didn't expect it.
Okay, now he's okay.
Yeah, I'll take the Loon point on that one.
How do we want to calculate this? Do we want to?
This is a tough one.
Most egregious prediction is Jose Barrios.
100%.
So we could give it to Jacob on that, or we can go player by player, +1 for correct, -1 for wrong.
Yeah, I don't know because
I feel like we should do the most egregious because
yeah,
okay.
like
I'm just trying to think. Hang on, you go first, Jacob.
Well, I was just gonna say like you can't really say that it's like a bad prediction saying Guerrero, Bichette. Like those are kind of obvious ones, but I don't really know what I was thinking with Barrios. Like if it's one that just was completely way off, then I think you get a point there.
Yeah,
okay.
My logic for I guess my biggest guy that was well, I mean Teoscar Hernandez was pretty off too, but I guess like entering the season, I think my biggest like surprise one was Chapman, and I remember my logic for it as much as it still doesn't get me out of the woods with it. I wanted to try and I know Jacob threw up Barrios, so he went before me because he usually goes before me. I wanted to try and get somebody out there that I didn't think Mark was going to predict, and I guess I was definitely right on that, even though I don't think Chapman came close. But to be fair, he was very good defensively and all that. So yeah, like that was just my logic behind it. Yeah,
I don't think Chapman was a bad prediction by any means. Like he ended up he was second on the team in homers, right behind Vladdy. Yeah, and if you factor in his defense and the fact that he played every day, like honestly, I think that was a pretty fair guess. And if we're looking at it retroactively, like if the All-Star game was at the end of the season instead of halfway through, I think Matt Chapman is a more deserving All-Star than Santiago Espinal. And of course, Espinal ended up going to the All-Star game, but Chapman didn't. So I honestly credit to you for predicting that, because I think it's a pretty fair guess. But okay, we give the point to Jacob for the most egregious prediction on that in terms of Jose Barrios. Just for full disclosure, the final tally for each of us, I said Vladdy, Bo, Romano, Gosman. Bryson, you said Vladdy, Teo, Bo, Chapman, Gosman. And Jacob, you said Vladdy, Springer, Romano, and Barrios. Okay, the next one is a little bit embarrassing for all of us. We predicted which league-wide awards, meaning MVP, Cy Young, or Rookie of the Year, would the Blue Jays win, or a player on the Blue Jays win. And all three of us, it was a clean sweep. We all said Vladimir Guerrero Jr. would be the most valuable player. And of course, that did not happen. He was nowhere close, or of course, we don't know the technical results yet, but of course, he's not going to be MVP. It's going to be Aaron Judge 1 and Shohei Ohtani 2. And who the hell cares who's number 3? Because Aaron Judge is winning with one of the best offensive seasons in baseball history. I don't think there's much to say on this one. I think we all take a point on this one for being very far from the truth. I'd be surprised if Vladdy got any votes for MVP. So a standings update on the Loon meter. Jacob leads with 5 points. Bryson and I are tied with 3 points. Okay, next up. Lowest starter ERA. Both Bryson and I predicted Kevin Gausman. I said Gausman was, quote, the clear runaway favorite. Bryson, you said Barrios will be right behind him. And then Jacob, you predicted Jose Barrios would have the lowest starter ERA. To be fair to you, you said it would be by not much over Kevin Gausman, but you did say Jose Barrios would lead the team in starter ERA. We turned out all to be wrong. It was Alek Manoah with a 2.24 ERA, but Bryson and I are a lot closer than you were, Jacob.
I can't believe I was so high on this guy. Like, it coming off of the 7-year
extension. You also overpicked
extension
for him in your fantasy draft.
Yeah, no, I was going to mention that for those. So I'm just going to get it out of the way. I made the conscious decision to draft Jose Barrios second overall when who was still available? Garrett Cole wasn't available. It was Scherzer, Manoah.
I think Cole was available.
No, I think you picked...
I'll look over the order quickly.
Well, I know
I got Cole, and I think I drafted fourth.
Oh, maybe you did, but basically, pretty much everybody on the market was available, and I picked Jose Barrios.
Aaron Judge.
Yeah, well, that was. But yeah, no, that was. I'll tell you what. I'm not making these bad predictions next season. Like,
you say that every year.
Okay, I'll throw out like 5 players that you drafted Barrios over. So I'm gonna ignore Tatis because of the whole controversy. So I'll give you 5 guys right now: Shane Bieber, Giancarlo Stanton, Matt Olson, Manny Machado, Yordan Alvarez. Those are 5 guys you picked Barrios over.
Well, to be fair, I did get Stanton later, but like,
true,
yeah, I know what you mean.
So then Bogarts is probably after that. Then
this
Regardless, it's tough.
I don't want to go into the whole fantasy thing because my team absolutely just was dog water. That was terrible. Oh man, like this whole starter thing, like I don't know how none of us predicted Manoah at all. Like I know the Barrios one's kind of funny to look back on, but I don't know. Well, to be fair, I guess Manoah just had a much better season than we expected him to, and I mean, I'll take it. He was one of their best, and he'll probably be the opening day starter next season. But again, I think we're all deserving of a point there. Maybe you want to give me an extra point. Maybe. Okay. So here's the thing: we were all wrong. We were wrong. I was just the most wrong.
So do you want to give all of us 1 point and you get 2 points? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Like, how do we? That's true.
Because bottom line, your prediction was worse than ours. You deserve more of a punishment.
Yeah, do that then. That's fair. Because like we were all wrong, but I was just extra wrong.
I will say this though, like I think it's no disrespect to Manoah. Like I think we all expected Manoah to take that next level, and he did. He definitely did. It's just we were very excited with Kevin Gausman, and the one thing too is I think, and this was something that we touched on a lot this year about how it felt Gausman was just one of the most unlucky pitchers in baseball. So you take away a couple starts where there was a couple of just unlucky play behind him. Perhaps the ERA is closer than we think. I'm still think Manoah would have led the way though because of how good he truly was. So I guess a little bit of a just a factor with how Kevin Gausman's ERA was a little bit higher than I think we all expected.
And if you want to give Bryson and I a little bit of credit, if you look at FIP, fielding independent pitching, Alek Manoah had a FIP of 3.35. Kevin Gausman led the American League with a FIP of 2.38. So I know that's not the question, and it's no excuse for getting it wrong, but based off pure performance, I think it's debatable. At least you can entertain the conversation where Kevin Gausman is in the same realm as Alek Manoah, which makes it a little bit more embarrassing in hindsight. A little bit less embarrassing in hindsight. Okay, the next question we faced was lowest reliever ERA. Turned out it was Jordan Romano. He had a 2.11 ERA, and he led the team, both starters and relievers, in ERA. Jacob, you said Jordan Romano. You said you think his ERA will be below 2. A little bit off there, but still good. Bryson, you said Jordan Romano. You expected the bullpen to be a lot better this year than last year. I'm the biggest loon on this one. I said Tim Meza. I don't know why I said that. I thought I was going to be smart. He ended up with a 3.14 ERA. At the time, I said, quote, "We'll see if it pays off or if I look like an idiot at the end of the season." And turns out I'm looking like an idiot at the end of the season.
The one thing I will say, and obviously I was not right fully on the ERA, but Jordan Romano's ERA was like 198, I think it was, up until that game. I think it was against the Orioles, the one where he came in.
Yeah.
The one that you and I were at, where he just blew it. So up until like the last week of the season or week and a half of the season, my prediction was looking good, but I'll take this win. You know what? I predicted it, and unfortunately, I'm going to say this again. This was another player that I drafted far too high. I think I drafted him actually before Kyle Schwarber, because I was looking back at it. I was showing some people, and then I drafted him before Kyle Schwarber, which I'm just gonna put that out there. But you know what? I'll tell you what. Jordan Romano had a dominant season. Kind of sucks that it ended the way it did, but he's by far one of the top closers going into next season.
Yeah, I mean, I just think in general with closers, no matter how good they are, like that's like I think I remember saying like that's way too high, Jacob. But you were a rookie this year, so I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. There's a lot of stuff you'll learn from, and I'll also at the same time though I will call you out for jinxing Romano, because I remember that appearance. You were taking videos of it and you were putting it all over social media, the light show, and then we know what happened the next inning. But
that was
I don't
bad.
know. I felt like, yeah, like I remember I thought a lot of what you did at the beginning of the year about how he was just going to be that dominant closer in the Blue Jays bullpen and just the dominant reliever in general. So I'm glad we were good on that one. And yeah, I mean, Mark, with Tim Meza, like I understood your prediction on that, and he was definitely really reliable too. So I think we all picked solid relievers, obviously, for this prediction. At least we didn't pick like a Trevor Richards or something, Mark, where you were trying to be, creative on that. So yeah, I guess Jacob avoids getting a loon point there. So good for him. And he'll learn not to draft a closer so high next year in the fantasy draft.
Yeah, Jacob's getting a lot of fantasy criticism. I think despite my team, I avoided it because I played well in the playoffs and ended up in 7th.
I'll tell you what, I don't know how much I learned because my hockey team might be 0-2 after this week. Although, to be fair, my points for are among the league leaders. So,
okay.
We'll ignore that.
A standings update on the Loon tally. Jacob's at 7. I'm at 5. Bryson is in the lead at 4. Okay, the next question we tackled was most stolen bases. I think we all deserve a point on this because we all said Bo Bichette, and it turns out it was George Springer. He led the team with 14 stolen bases, although to be fair, Bichette was right behind him with 13 stolen bases. So I don't know if we all want a point on this or none of us get a point on this. Bottom line, for the math, it doesn't make much of a difference. It's just kind of the spirit of it. But I think, to be fair, we were pretty close to what the final result was.
Jacob, before you go, I just want to say I want you to make this decision because this impacts you because you're in the lead. So it depends on how many loon counts you want to end with. You make the call.
Oh, okay. Uh-oh. Yeah, I think none of us get a point because I'm looking at the rest of them, and I think there's one more that I know for a fact I'm not getting a loon point for, but the rest of them are a little bit suspiciously awkward in terms of what I picked. So I think none of us get a point.
Okay, so none of us get a point because we're all just one stolen base off. So credit to us. We can pat ourselves on the back for that one because we were relatively close. But as Jacob alluded to, The next one is rough for him. The next one is we predicted who would have the highest WAR on the team among any player. Bryson, you said Vladdy. You were tempted to go with Bo, but you ended up going Vladdy. I said Vladdy. Jacob, you said Teoscar Hernandez, and I think this is just indefensible. We were shocked when you said this, and I think we're equally as shocked now. The final tally, according to Baseball Reference, was Alek Manoah 1. For Bryson and I, George Springer was 2, Vladdy was 3, Bo Bichette was 5, and then Teoscar Hernandez, Jacob, was 10th, according to Baseball Reference. And if you don't trust Baseball Reference, that's okay. Let's go to Fangraphs. Kevin Gausman 1, Bo Bichette 2, George Springer 3. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was 8th, so that's rough for Bryson and I. But Teoscar Hernandez, 10th again with 2.4 WAR. No matter how you shake this, Jacob, this is a really big L, and you've got to take a point on the Loon meter.
The only thing I will say is when you win back-to-back Silver Sluggers, you got to at least anticipate something like this happening. And he missed, what was it, like 20 games at the start or something like that?
Both of us were shocked when you said this, and this was at the start of the season. So we saw this coming 1,000 miles away.
Okay, fair enough.
Even if healthy, I don't think he was close. Like if Teoscar doesn't miss those games, but
like to compare the totals, according to Baseball Reference, Alek Manoah was 5.9, Teoscar Hernandez was 2.7, and then Fangraphs, Kevin Gausman was 5.7, Teoscar Hernandez was 2.4. So no matter how you shake it, he's a mile away from winning.
I will take the L. I have nothing else to say.
I'd be willing to argue that Jacob deserves 2 points.
No, sir. I deserve 1.
Fair.
I already voluntarily took 2.
Well, I'll slander myself a bit. First of all, a lot of my reasoning was to follow what Mark did because of his prediction last year with Simeon.
Second of all, I will take this moment to
saw you put that on the
gloat a little bit because I did predict 2021 Marcus Simeon would lead the team with WAR.
Correct.
Back when no one thought that was going to be the case, and I ended up being right. So I'll take my crown on that one, even though it was a big L on this one.
And that was my logic. I said, okay, I'm going to make sure I get the same prediction as Mark. And this whole, like, as you can see, especially from me, because I picked Vladdy. This whole prediction thing, from my view, was Vladdy was going to really be this breakout candidate. We didn't see it. Maybe we'll see it. I don't know. Hopefully next year, but it just shows what my thinking was on this about how much of high hopes I did have for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. But yeah, Jacob, I do like that's the one thing from that episode I do remember is that we all we were literally going like that, and then we were like, what? Like I just remember how thrown off we were on that. So, good for you for taking credit for it. And next year, you're really gonna have to redeem yourself with your prediction. I think out of all, you have the most pressure next year for your WAR prediction. I think
next year is gonna be an absolute mess. I don't like. Well, the one thing I will say, it can't get much worse than this, but no, I'm kidding. Like, it needs to get a lot better. Like, I think if anything, this season, like as a whole, we know where this Blue Jay team currently sits. We saw a lot of breakouts in 2021, 2022. Still a good season, not entirely what we had expected it to be. So, I think next year we have a little bit more of an actual sample size to go off of. At least for me, because God knows what I was doing back in April.
Okay. That is it for the general individual performances. We move now to our biggest 3 predictions, and we all look really dumb on these ones. But the first is the AL East standings. We predicted the way it would shake out. The final results, as we're all familiar with, it was Yankees 1, Blue Jays 2, Rays 3, Orioles 4, Red Sox 5. Bryson and I think on this one, we're kind of the biggest losers. To clarify, all 3 of us said that the Blue Jays would be first. Bryson and I said the Rays would be second. And then I said Yankees 3, Red Sox 4, Orioles 5. Bryson, you went Red Sox 3, Yankees 4, Orioles 5. And then Jacob, you deserve credit on this one. You were the most correct. You went Blue Jays 1, Yankees 2, Rays 3, Red Sox 4, Orioles 5. So we all kind of take the L when it comes to the Orioles, but Jacob, you predicted the success of the Yankees most closely. So I think you avoid a point here. I think Bryson and I will end up with a point, although I will argue I was more accurate than Bryson because I went Yankees, Red Sox, Orioles instead of Red Sox, Yankees, Orioles.
I'll take the full point on this one. I'll
Okay.
step in and I'll do it because
Okay.
like the Red Sox were a disaster. Like, I mean, you finish like you go to from that prediction, of course, and you go to 5. I know they got a lot of interesting decisions to make in the offseason, but historically, they've always been that team that can recover a year later. So you have to put that into account, but you also have to put into account again, like Bogarts, Devers, their deals are coming up. It might look a little different. Like their team might look very different next year. And the other thing that we're gonna have to really take account for next year is how we're going to predict the Orioles. I think that's going to be tough because who knows if they take that next step? Who knows if they fall back down to what we've seen from them in the last couple of years? So I think next year's AL East standings prediction might actually be even more difficult than it was this year. That's just my opinion.
It's going to be, well, also one thing we need to consider, I don't really know how we're going to do it, but the schedule kicks in to be a little bit different next year. You're not playing the AL East as much. You're playing everybody. So you're playing, I think there's certain teams where it's only one series against them. So I think it's like the Dodgers or whatever, like the NL West, something like that, where you play them once instead of once every 3 seasons. So that's a little bit less than you're actually playing against your division. So we'll see. I still think the Yankees will be good. Well, if they're not good, that'll be a ridiculous shock. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens next season when you're not actually playing your division as much. And I think who in the AL East will benefit from that the most. I don't know. I think they all will, but we'll see.
And to me, that also affects the win-loss record the most because now 100 games, it's not as more of a bold prediction as it could be when you're playing every other team next year and you're avoiding the Rays and all that as much as you did in years past. So that'll probably, in my opinion, affect the win-loss record prediction the most.
And to add to the complications, in addition to the mystery that the Red Sox are and the fact that the Yankees are probably going to be good again, you also have the Orioles who are making a run at it and probably going to be in the mix. I don't know if I would say to win the AL East. I don't think they're quite at that step yet, but I think they are certainly going to be in contention for a wild card spot. So when you factor in those 3 things, then you start talking about the Orioles being among kind of that middle pack of like Rays, Blue Jays. Like, I don't know. This division is going to be a mess next year. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, even though they do have less games against them. But bottom line, Bryson, you get the point on that one. The final update I'm going to give before we wrap this up with 2 more predictions is that Jacob is leading with 8 points. Bryson, you're at 5. I am at 5 as well. So our second to last prediction.
No, I don't want to talk about that.
His magic number is 0. And yeah, but anyways, we'll celebrate that at the end. The next prediction we gave, postseason run. We all know how it ended for the Blue Jays, and it was very short. It was 2 games against the Mariners. We don't have to relive that now. I was the closest. I said the Blue Jays would lose in the ALCS to the Astros in 7 games. Bryson, you were the second closest. You said they would lose in the World Series to the Dodgers in 6 games. Jacob, I'm sorry, man.
Do you want me to say it, or do you want me to, or do you want to?
You say it. You take full credit for it.
A year after saying the Blue Jays would go to the World Series and play the Padres, which none of them made the playoffs in 2021, said that the Blue Jays would win the World Series in 6 games against the Milwaukee Brewers. And for context, Blue Jays swept in the wild card. Brewers were 1 game short of the wild card. So I don't know.
I'll say this. I think if you didn't predict the Brewers, I would have offered me and you to take the Loon points on this, but it's hard for me to have an answer because the fact that you picked the Brewers. So I don't know. You guys figure this one out. I really don't know how we're going to handle this one. The only thing I know is Mark's not getting a point, as much as you also predicted the Brewers. This was a tough one because of the Brewers complications.
I think it's pretty clearly Jacob who gets a point on this one because
I'm in agreement.
Not only does he say that the Blue Jays make it to the World Series, he's predicting that they win the World Series, which I feel like is a very dramatic step over you predicting just that they make the World Series. Like, I feel like that's a big step to take.
Okay, that's fair.
And then there's also the Brewers part of it, which I deserve some credit or some blame there as well, because I did predict the Brewers to win the World Series over the Astros. So I do deserve some of the blame there, but I don't know, Jacob. I think this is all you.
Sorry, Jacob.
Oh, what was I thinking?
I don't know. I think couldn't tell you.
Actually, if I remember correctly, I feel like when we made this episode, I said something along the lines of, I don't want to say that they win the World Series every year and be right once. So I'm be like, oh, I'm right once, but my like accuracy is extremely low.
Yeah.
It's not only is my accuracy low, my prediction, uh, just raw predictions are bad too. So, oh my god.
Will you predict the World Series win again next year? Like, if I had to ask you on October 22nd.
See, here's where it's tough. What if they go out and make a big splash this free agency again?
He's gonna do it again. He's gonna do it.
I'm not making any comments. What I'm saying is, what if they do something big and we're in the same position as we are next year, where it looks like they're going to be a 100-win team again? Well, or it looked like they're going to be projected to be a 100-win team. That's what I mean. Like, do I predict it and do I get 1 out of 3 years correct? Do I not predict it and potentially get or be proven wrong? I don't know. I'm not predicting anything.
The year you say they don't win the World Series, they're going to win the World Series. I'll tell you now, I don't think I will ever predict the Blue Jays to win the World Series. It's just so tough, and there's so much luck that goes into it. I don't think you can ever say that they will win the World Series. It's just going to happen, and you're going to be surprised.
Yeah, I don't think baseball is really the one where you can give accurate odds. Like, I think it's just once you actually get
unless you're Trevor Plouffe. I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, unless you're like, unless in a couple days when we know the World Series matchup, then you can like actually predict it, or at least make assumptions. But it's not like you can say on April 8th that the Blue Jays are going to win, or at least I did. But I don't think you can do that anymore.
I can just
Phillies
see it
over the Astros in 6 games.
Wow. I bet for Jacob, I can just see it. They're going to get a left-handed at bat. They're going to get velocity. They're going to get 2 or 3 arms. And then we're going to be at square one. And then you're going to say they're going to play, I don't know, from the NL. But I have a very confident feeling you're going to predict the Jays again next year. Just give them one offseason to get those targets. We're back at square one again with you, I think.
All I will say is that's exactly what I think they need to get. I will say nothing further.
I appreciate the blind optimism. I do. I really do.
Do I.
Okay. So yeah, Jacob's already clinched. His magic number is 0, but he's at 9 points. Bryson and I are tied at 5. We go to the final prediction, which is win-loss record. The Blue Jays actually ending up with a 92-70 record. Jacob, I'm sorry, man, but you had them at 99-63. I had them at 97-65, and Bryson, you had them at 96-66. I think on this one, just so we don't end up with a tie, that Jacob gets 2 points, I get 1 point. Bryson, you don't get any, and then you are officially the smallest loon, the smartest,
the least loon,
the least loon. I don't know what we want to call it, but okay. So do we have any...
I don't think I get 2 points. Like, it's, to be fair, like
I'll let you two figure this one out.
To be fair, I was the highest win total and I was the most off, but we were all within a couple of games. And
okay, but the reason I say you get 2 and I get 1 is because I shouldn't get the same amount of points as you because you were more wrong than me. But at the same time, I need to get a point so that I no longer am tied with Bryson because he was more correct on this. And also, I think if we're like weighting this prediction in comparison to others, like the final record holds way more importance than like predicting like George Springer over under game played. Like if you're ranking in the grand scheme of things, like this is like the prediction that we made.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
I don't understand why if you're at 99, you should have just predicted 100. That's what I would have done if I were you.
And you were trying to get him to get to 100. You were saying
I
do it.
I had a feeling I was.
And...
yeah.
I wasn't gonna do it.
I'm glad that's pretty crazy. I'm doing the same thing I did in April. You should have done it. I don't know why you like 99.
I'm doing it.
Okay.
Maybe next year.
Okay. So there we are.
Wow. Okay.
The biggest loon, to no one's surprise, is Jacob.
What do you mean to no one's surprise?
He takes
Jacob, can you read your final
points.
thoughts, please, for us?
Oh, man. You want me to read it or you want Mark to read it?
Kind of.
Oh, man. Okay. So where's the document at? So in the spring, in order to justify what I said, quote, some of my predictions, they might seem a little weird right now, but just let the season play out and we'll see. End quote.
We let it play out.
And then we saw.
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm making predictions next season. I'll put it that way.
I'll give you
Wow.
guys a prediction right now for the offseason, because I know this is something you
Okay.
guys have been going at since July.
Freddie Freeman gets traded to the Blue Jays.
No,
No, I'm kidding.
okay,
That's not
stop
happening.
it.
That's
Okay.
not happening.
I'm not saying I'll keep it very basic. I'm not saying who, but will a catcher be traded this offseason?
Yes.
Guaranteed. Well, I think we've all discussed this. Like Mark and I got heat for it back in the summer, but like
Yeah.
it's gonna happen eventually.
If I'm consistent on one thing, is the fact that the Blue Jays are trading a catcher.
I'm glad. I think we can revisit this now, because I think even one of our YouTube members said now we can kind of revisit it. I was the least optimistic in the summer, but I will say that I think I was more I was more confident that this was something they would address in the winter. So I guess for you guys, I'll join you guys. I think I don't know who. I'm not saying I'm gonna say it's Kirk or Moreno, but yeah, I think you might have to package some assets in order to get what you need, right? So that's what they have. They have they have over depth at catching, and they need lefties. They need bullpen arms. They need arbs in general. They're going to need probably another fifth starter. So I'll be with you guys on that one.
Nice. Welcome to the correct side of the argument. Okay, so the biggest loon is Jacob.
Congrats, Jacob.
The least loon is Bryson. This has been fun to unpack our predictions. We're going to be back here in how many months? Start of April. Opening day is, or I guess end of March, because opening day is March 30th against the Cardinals. So we'll be back here just before that. It is a little bit earlier. But we'll be back just before that to offer our predictions on the 2023 season. And we're looking forward to making fun of ourselves all over again a year from now. As always, you can support our podcast by going to patreon.com/section138pod. You can check us out on social media. That's at section138pod on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can find us on YouTube. If you're watching this episode, you can find us on your favorite podcatcher. You can give us a rating and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. If you have a suggestion for how we should spend the offseason and how we should spend the rest of the postseason creating content, please let us know on social media, because we're always looking for ideas, especially now that there's not news coming around the corner every single day. Okay, we'll catch you whenever the next episode comes out, whenever that may be. Until then, enjoy the postseason.